If you look at what happened between Washington and Ottawa overnight, it doesn't look like a negotiation. It doesn't look like a compromise. It looks like a detonation. For decades, the United States and Canada shared the most integrated economy on the planet. Two countries, one machine, seamless, synchronized, predictable. But as of this morning, predictable is dead. Donald Trump didn't just escalate the trade war, he tried to end it with a knockout punch. He signed an executive order at 11 p.m. last night invoking emergency economic powers to freeze Canadian assets held in U.S. financial institutions. He thought that would be the kill shot. He thought Canada would crawl back to the table with its hands up. He thought Mark Carney would fold under the weight of Wall Street. He was catastrophically wrong. Carney didn't fold. He didn't flinch. He didn't even hold a press conference. He picked up the phone, called the governor of the Bank of England, the head of the European Central Bank, and the Japanese finance minister, and within 6 hours, something unprecedented happened. A joint emergency liquidity facility was announced, backed by 4 central banks designed to shield Canada from U.S. financial pressure. The markets didn't just react. They convulsed. The dollar dropped. Gold surged, and the Dow opened down 700 points before the opening bell even stopped ringing. Trump is scrambling. The Treasury Department is in full crisis mode. And once again, the media is chasing the wrong headline. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what happened while you were sleeping, who made the first call, and why the financial architecture of the Western world just cracked down the middle. So let's rewind. Here is exactly what triggered the last 24 hours of chaos. It started with a silence. After the initial tariff standoff, both sides went quiet for 72 hours. Washington took that silence as weakness. They assumed Carney was negotiating internally, that the Canadian business community was pressuring him to cave, that the premiers were revolting behind closed doors. They were wrong about all of it. What Carney was actually doing during those 72 hours was something no one in Washington anticipated. He was building a coalition, not a political coalition, a financial one. Sources inside the Prime Minister's office now confirm that Carney spent those 3 days on encrypted calls with central bank governors across 4 continents. He wasn't asking for sympathy. He was offering a deal. And the deal was simple. He told them, if the United States can weaponize financial infrastructure against its closest ally, none of you are safe. Help me build an alternative. Or wait until it's your turn. That argument landed. It landed hard. Because every finance minister in Europe and Asia has been quietly terrified of exactly this scenario since 2022. They watched the U.S. freeze Russian assets. They watched the U.S. threaten sanctions on Chinese banks. They saw Washington turn the dollar into a weapon. And they all asked the same private question: what happens when they point that weapon at us? Carney gave them the answer. You build a shield before you need one. And that's exactly what they did. The Joint Emergency Liquidity Facility, let's call it what it actually is, a financial NATO. It's a mutual defense pact for central banks. If the U.S. freezes Canadian assets, the facility injects equivalent liquidity from European and Asian reserves. It doesn't replace the money, it neutralizes the leverage. It makes the freeze meaningless. And here is the part that should terrify Washington. It's not just for Canada. The framework is designed to be expandable. Any allied nation that faces U.S. financial coercion can theoretically plug into the system. Carney didn't just protect Canada. He built the infrastructure for the rest of the world to say no to America. Trump found out about this at 5 a.m. this morning. We know this because his first Truth Social post hit at 5:07 a.m. all caps. 6 exclamation points. He called Carney a traitor to the Western world. He called the European Central Bank a puppet of socialism. He threatened to pull the U.S. out of the IMF. The posts kept coming every 4 minutes for 45 minutes straight. That's not strategy. That's panic. Let me show you the receipts, because this isn't about politics anymore. This is about the plumbing of the global economy. And the pipes are cracking. Receipt number 1. The dollar index. Within 2 hours of the facility announcement, the U.S. dollar index dropped 1.8%. That doesn't sound like a lot. It is enormous. The dollar index doesn't move like that on a Tuesday morning. It moves like that during financial crises. The last time it dropped that fast in a single session was March 2020. The message from the market is clear. Confidence in the dollar as a neutral global reserve currency just took a bullet. Not a fatal one. Not yet. But the bleeding has started, And Carney, the former central banker, knows exactly where that wound leads if it isn't treated. Receipt number 2, the bond market. This is where it gets really ugly for the White House. U.S. Treasury yields spiked this morning, not because of inflation expectations, because of trust expectations. Foreign holders of U.S. debt are quietly asking a question they have never had to ask before. If Washington will freeze allied assets over a trade dispute, are our Treasury holdings actually safe? Japan holds over $1 trillion in U.S. Treasuries. China holds nearly $800 billion. The U.K. holds over $700 billion. These countries just watched America try to financially kneecap Canada. Canada, the country that has fought beside the United States in every major conflict for a century. If Canada isn't safe, nobody is safe. And when nobody feels safe, nobody buys your debt. Yields go up, borrowing costs go up, the deficit gets more expensive, and the whole fiscal house of cards that Washington has been building for 20 years starts to wobble. Receipt number 3, the corporate exodus. This one is happening in real time, and it's the one that's going to hit American workers the hardest. Within hours of Trump's asset freeze order, 3 major Canadian pension funds announced they are reviewing all U.S.-based holdings. The Canada Pension Plan Investment Board alone holds over $300 billion in global assets. A significant chunk of that in American companies, American real estate, American infrastructure. If they start pulling that money, and sources say the review is already underway, the impact on U.S. markets won't be gradual. It will be a cliff. But it's not just Canadian money. Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, the largest in the world, issued a statement this morning saying they are, quote, monitoring the situation with concern. That's Sovereign Wealth Fund language for we are getting ready to move. Carney knows this. He designed this. He understands that in the modern world, the most powerful weapon isn't a tariff, it isn't a sanction, it's capital flight. And he just showed the world how to trigger it. So what is Trump actually trying to accomplish? Let's be honest about this, because the White House messaging has been all over the place. First, it was about dairy. Then it was about digital services tax. Then it was about border security. Then it was about NATO spending. Now it's about financial sovereignty. The goalposts haven't just moved. They've left the stadium. The truth is, this was never about trade. This is about dominance. Trump cannot tolerate a world where a smaller country tells him no and gets away with it. Because if Canada gets away with it, the model breaks. The entire Trump foreign policy doctrine is built on the idea that America's economic gravity is so massive that no country can resist it. Every negotiation starts from the assumption that the other side needs America more than America needs them. Carney just disproved that assumption, not by being bigger, not by being stronger, by being smarter. He found the one thing the U.S. can't do without, credibility, and he put a crack in it, and credibility, once cracked, doesn't heal quickly. Now let's talk about what's happening inside Canada, because the American media keeps portraying this as Carney going rogue. That's not what's happening. The latest polling shows Carney's approval rating has surged 14 points in the last week. 14 points. In Canadian politics, that's an earthquake. Canadians across the political spectrum, conservatives included, are rallying behind him. This isn't a left-right issue in Canada anymore. It's a sovereignty issue. The premiers of Alberta and Ontario, who have historically been the most pro-American voices in Canadian politics, issued a joint statement last night supporting Carney's position. Alberta, the province whose entire economy is built on selling oil to the United States, even they have decided that enough is enough. When you've lost Alberta, you've lost the argument. And here's what's really interesting. Canadian consumer behavior is shifting in real time. There's a grassroots movement exploding across social media. Canadians are actively boycotting American products. Not because anyone told them to. Because they're angry, sales of American beer brands dropped 30% in Ontario last week. Canadian tourism to the United States is down 40% compared to this time last year. Cross-border shopping trips, which used to be a weekend tradition for millions of Canadians, have essentially stopped. This is the part Trump didn't calculate. He thought about governments. He forgot about people. 20 million Canadian consumers just decided they don't want American products anymore. That's not a tariff, that's something worse. It's a cultural rejection. And you can't tweet your way out of a cultural rejection, so where does this leave the global order? Let me be blunt. We're watching the birth of a post-American financial system. Not today, not tomorrow. But the architectural drawings are being passed around. Carney's liquidity facility isn't just a defensive measure, it's a proof of concept. It proves that the Western world can function without the U.S. at the center. It proves that the dollar's monopoly is a choice, not a law of physics. And once that idea takes root, it doesn't go away. The BRICS nations have been talking about de-dollarization for years. Everyone dismissed it as fantasy. But Carney just did something the BRICS never could. He made de-dollarization respectable. He made it a Western idea. He made it a democratic idea. When Brazil or China talks about moving away from the dollar, Washington calls it an attack on the free world. When the former governor of the Bank of England does it, what do you call it then? This is the irony that should keep every American policymaker awake tonight. Trump's aggression toward Canada hasn't weakened the enemies of American hegemony. It's given them a blueprint, and the blueprint was drawn by a man who used to run the Western financial system. Carney didn't learn these tools from an adversary. He learned them from inside the machine. He knows where every wire connects. He knows which ones to cut, and he's holding the scissors. Let's talk about the three scenarios going forward, because the situation has evolved since the initial standoff. The old scenarios are dead. Here are the new ones. Scenario A, the negotiated retreat. Trump quietly drops the asset freeze. The tariffs get reduced to a symbolic level. Both sides claim victory. Carney keeps the liquidity facility in place as insurance. The relationship survives, but is permanently scarred. Trust never fully returns. This is the best case scenario. I give it a 30% chance. Scenario B, the slow divorce. The tariffs stay. The asset freeze stays. Canada accelerates its pivot to Europe and Asia. Over the next 2 to 3 years, the economic integration that took 30 years to build is systematically unwound. The border doesn't close, but it thickens. Trade continues, but at reduced levels. Both economies suffer, but both survive. This is the most likely scenario. I give it a 50% chance. Scenario C, the rupture. Trump escalates further. He invokes national security provisions to seize Canadian energy infrastructure on U.S. soil. Canada retaliates by restricting energy exports. The Great Lakes Industrial Corridor shuts down. 1 million jobs disappear in 90 days on both sides of the border. NATO fractures. The Western alliance splits into American and non-American blocs. This sounds extreme. I give it a 20% chance. 6 months ago, I would have given it 2%. That's how fast the ground is shifting. Here's what I need you to understand. This is not a drill. This is not political theater. This is the real economy, your economy, being rewired in real time by two men who have both decided they cannot afford to lose. Trump can't lose because his entire political identity is built on never backing down. Carney can't lose because he has staked Canada's future on the idea that sovereignty isn't negotiable. When two leaders reach that point, the off-ramps disappear, and we are running out of road. The question you should be asking yourself tonight isn't who's right. It's what happens to your job, your savings, your mortgage rate, and the price of gas in your car when two of the world's most integrated economies start treating each other like strangers. Because that's what's happening. Not in theory, not in some think tank white paper. Right now, on your screen, in your portfolio. In the price you're going to pay at the grocery store next Tuesday, Carney bet that the world would back him. So far, the world is proving him right. Trump bet that raw power always wins. So far, the markets are proving him wrong. One of them is going to blink. And when they do, the world that comes after will look nothing like the world that came before. I want to hear from you. Do you think Carney has overplayed his hand? Or has Trump finally met someone who knows how to fight back without throwing a punch? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and if you think this is the biggest story no one is covering properly, share this video. Send it to someone who still thinks this is just about tariffs. It's not about tariffs. It's about the future of the Western world. And the clock is ticking. Subscribe if you haven't already, because when the markets open tomorrow, you're going to want context, not just headlines. History isn't just moving fast anymore. It's accelerating, and we're all along for the ride.